Boys, what is good? It's Herm. We're here with the first post-lottery mock draft. So we have the official order now. I made a mock draft about a week ago because I was going on vacation. It was easy to do. But now we have the official order. So I have this, little better presentation here. We're going to get into it. All the first round, every pick, not trades. I think teams like Portland might trade out, but we're not going to do that in this video. We'll do that in a later video for sure. But I'm going to break down each prospect. I'm going to break down everything about him, and we're going to get into it. So hopefully you'll enjoy, but let's just get this thing started. So with the first pick, the San Antonio Spurs are taking power forward / center Victor Wembanyama out of Metz 92 of France. It's the no-brainer pick. I mean, Woj called him like the best prospect in the history of team sports or something, which I think is crazy. Honestly, I think probably LeBron is a slightly better prospect, I would think, because LeBron was called the savior coming out of high school. He was crazy. He was the king, the chosen one, all those things. LeBron was that. But I took these descriptions from The Ringer because I liked them. So the NBA's greatest prospect in decades with the ceiling to be an all-time great, and unlike anyone the game has seen before. He's 7'5", 230 pounds, just 19 years old. 8-foot wingspan is ridiculous. That's actually absurd. But can block shots, can play like a guard. 22 points per game, 11 rebounds, 3 blocks. I saw he was just named his league's MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and Rookie of the Year pretty much, so that was insane. He's a crazy player. He can play power forward. He can play center. I think maybe the Spurs go out, get someone like Brook Lopez in free agency. They have money, and just allow Victor Wembanyama to roam at the 4. In terms of comparisons, he's unlike anyone we've seen before, so there's not a great one. But I'd say this generation's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is a decent comparison, or like a taller Anthony Davis, who back in his prime at least could space the floor. He used to be a pretty good shooter, and Victor can do that, but he can be the great defender that AD is. He can be the great offensive player. He's just 7'5" instead of 7 feet. So he's great. The duo of him and Jeremy Sohan, I'm really excited for it. And that's who I have the Spurs taking. At second, I have the Charlotte Hornets taking point guard Scoot Henderson out of the G League Ignite. I see a lot of people saying that they might take Brandon Miller because they already have LaMelo. Don't do that. Take the best player available, especially if you're at 2. You're a team that's been in the lottery for a while. Take the best player available. Do not draft for fit at number 2. And anyways, I think Scoot and LaMelo can play off each other fine. Scoot is really aggressive. He's kind of a downhill kind of guard. He's a supreme athlete who wants to bury his opponents with ferocious dunks. Plus, he has the skills to both lead an offense and energize a defense. I think the pairing of him and LaMelo is actually really nice because LaMelo can play off the ball and Scoot can be the lead guard. I think the two can work together well. He's already worked with Terry Rozier fine, so I think Terry Rozier is probably out the door with this. But if I'm the Hornets, you have to take Scoot. I think he's the best player. I think he's the guy that makes the most sense. I actually even like the fit. So you have those two going forward. You have Mark Williams as your center. Maybe Miles Bridges comes back, and that's another reason you're not going to take Brandon Miller. Even though he wasn't guilty of any of the stuff that was going on during the college season, I just don't think they want to take on another situation like that when they already have Miles Bridges' situation. So 6'2", 195, 19 years old, 6'9" wingspan, pretty good for a guard of his size. 16.5 points, 6.5 assists, and 1 steal per game in the Ignite program this year, similar to a guy like Russell Westbrook or Derrick Rose. He's going to attack hard, and honestly, I think he might end up being a better player than LaMelo. I don't think that's crazy at all. So to take Miller because you have LaMelo, I just think would be a mistake and a bad idea, but let's get to number 3. At number 3, I have the Portland Trail Blazers, who I think might trade this pick. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. I think they probably will trade it, but if they stay, Brandon Miller, small forward out of Alabama. Tall scorer with playmaking skills who can do everything on the court. He's a bucket. He's a walking bucket, and he has the ability to become a good defender. So I like him fit on the Blazers right now. They were running kind of like a Nasir Little in the starting lineup. Put Miller out there. Run Dame, run Simons, run Miller, Grant, and Nurkic. They still need an upgrade at center, but getting Miller in the front court with Jeremy Grant, I actually really like it. I think it's a great fit. I know they're going to trade it, but I like the fit anyway. 6'9", 200 pounds, 20 years old. Not a huge wingspan at 6'11" for his height, but 19 points per game at Alabama, 8.2 rebounds, and 38% from 3, floor spacer, just to add to the already elite shooting that the Trailblazers have. So I really like the pick. I think it makes sense, and he's like a Paul George type. That's what I hear a lot, and I actually think that makes a ton of sense. So Danny Granger is another example who didn't have quite the prime of Paul George, but also a pacer, so I think he's the pick at 3 if the Trail Blazers stay. I think these are kind of like the locked-in top 3 prospects. But let's get into 4. At 4, the Houston Rockets, I have them taking point guard / shooting guard. You can even play a little small forward if you need him to. Amen Thompson out of the Overtime Elite. Electric shot creator with a distinguished combination of passing vision and zippy athleticism. Is going to come into the NBA and already be one of the best athletes. But the enticing thing here to me, if you're the Rockets, is he can play point guard. I've been a big defender of, I actually don't think the Kevin Porter Jr. fit isn't that bad. I think KPJ's been kind of a good point guard, underrated wise. He hasn't really been that bad. A lot of people would say the experiment with him has failed. I don't think that's true. But I think Amen Thompson has a much higher ceiling than a guy like Kevin Porter Jr. So 6'7", 200 pounds, is 20 years old, just like Brandon Miller, but not too old. 6'9" wingspan, gets compared to a taller John Morant without the off-the-court issues, as well as like a thinner Zion Williamson. So he's kind of skinny. That might be a problem. You have him and Jalen Green in your backcourt. You have 2 skinny guards, but just a super, super athlete who can play make. So I like him with what the roster needs. They need a point guard. And you can bring KPJ off the bench. This doesn't immediately like push KPJ out of town, but I think it's a good fit. I know Rockets fans are disappointed that their pick fell to 4, but I think getting Amen Thompson is a smooth fit for what your team needs. At number 5, I have the Detroit Pistons taking small forward / power forward, Cam Whitmore out of Villanova. Probably only going to play like a power forward. If it's like a small ball type of lineup, he's more of a small forward, but a relentless competitor who has a high floor and has flashed signs of stardom. Another really good athlete, not the same level of athlete as Amen Thompson, but just a very good one. You know, he can power through people, he can finish at the rim, a very smooth player. He's working on the mid-range, working on the 3-point. That stuff still needs improving, but has very, very high upside, so I like that. 6'6", 235 pounds, is a big physical 6'6", 18 years old, 6'8" wingspan, not super huge, but very similar to players like Miles Bridges, who was just averaging 20 points a game like a year ago for the Hornets, and Josh Smith, another great, kind of vertical threat, super athletic forward. That's what Cam Whitmore gives you. They really were hoping to get the first pick. They won 17 games this year. It's kind of tough that they fell to 5. Like that's about as bad as it could get if you're the Pistons, it feels like. But they get Whitmore, who I actually really like alongside their pieces. You got Caden Ivey in the backcourt. You got Whitmore at the 3 now, and maybe you play Wiseman at the 4 and Duren at the 5, and I think that's interesting going forward. And they still have Bojan, so they can keep Bojan at the 4. With a lineup of Cade, Ivey, Whitmore, Bojan, and Duren, I actually think they could make a playoff push, at least towards the play-in. They have the players to do it, so this gives them a good player, but not the player that they wanted. At number 6, the Orlando Magic, I have them taking point guard / shooting guard. He's really a combo guard. Anthony Black out of Arkansas. Enhances star teammates by instantly processing plays while thriving in any role. That reminds me perfectly, they have 2 star teammates. So he has Franz Wagner, he has Paolo Banchero, he makes both of those players better. I know they have Markelle Fultz, they have Suggs, but I just think Anthony Black at this point is probably going to be better than them, and he's a combo guard, so you can play him alongside those guys. He doesn't necessarily take away from them, he can play with them. 6'6", 210 pounds, not super scrawny at 6'6", 19 years old, 13 points per game, 4 assists, 2 steals. His pro comparison is Lonzo Ball, who, when he was on the Bulls, 2 years ago, before he was hurt, he had them as the 1 seed in the East. And sneakily, the Magic last year, after, I believe it was after New Year, they were like the 6th seed in the East, because they struggled really early on, but as the season went on, they were a good team. So adding a guy that can be a point guard for you, high upside like Anthony Black, I really like it, especially to give you a big 3 of Anthony Black, Paolo Banchero, and Franz Wagner. At number 7, I have the Pacers going with power forward Jarris Walker out of Houston. You could go Taylor Hendricks here. I think it's kind of a coin flip, but you probably want a forward, whether it's a small forward or a power forward, a versatile wrecking ball on defense and skilled playmaker on offense. They don't need the passing necessarily just because of how good of a passer Tyrese Halliburton is, but they need a power forward. They were running Aaron Nesmith a lot at power forward towards the end of last year because they just didn't really have one. If we're being realistic, Aaron Nesmith is like a shooting guard. So they need a power forward pretty badly to fill out next to Miles Turner, but one that doesn't necessarily take away from him, and I don't think Jarris Walker does that. 6'7", 250 pounds, bruiser, big dude, 19 years old, 7'3" wingspan is huge for his size. That is 8 inches larger than his height, which is very, very uncommon. 11 points, 7 assists, and 35% from 3 as a big bruiser guy like that is a good sign, and a sign that it could get better. Pro comparison, a guy like Larry Johnson, who was on the Hornets back in the day, super great athlete but physical, imposing, as well as a guy like Carl Landry, who's a little more recent than Larry Johnson, but similar players, bruiser. I think he slots right into the position they need the most, so it's almost a no-brainer pick for me, but it's between two guys. At number 8, the Washington Wizards. I have them taking shooting guard / point guard, Ausar Thompson out of the Overtime Elite. It's a little bit of a slip here. Some people have him as high as 5. Some people like him better than his brother Amen. I just don't think the athleticism is quite as good, but he is a very good athlete. Blur of an athlete who makes a significant two-way impact with lockdown defense and aggressive downhill scoring. The thing that he brings you is he is a better defender than his brother Amen. That is for sure. He's a better defender. He tries hard on defense, and he's super athletic. He's going to get you, kind of plays out in the open, but I just don't think he's as good of a playmaker as a guy like Amen is. They kind of need a point guard. They could try to make Ausar their point guard, but for me, if you're the Wizards, who even knows if Beal's going to be there? You take the best player available, and Ausar Thompson is the best player available. 6'6", 220 pounds, a little less skinny than his brother actually, 20 years old, and a 7-foot wingspan, pretty solid. Kind of like a Jason Richardson type, who's a great athlete on the Warriors and could play good defense. So a two-way guy, and kind of like Sean Livingston in his prime, who people forget before Sean Livingston got injured with that really nasty knee injury. Sean Livingston was awesome. He was an awesome player, and I think Ausar Thompson could be one of the building blocks of this Wizards team going forward. At number 9, the Utah Jazz. I just think they need a point guard. They traded Mike Conley at last year's trade deadline. They didn't really get a point guard back. So I'm going to take point guard Cason Wallace out of Kentucky. Game-changing point of attack defender who also fills gaps on offense as a playmaker and a shooter. They need playmaking more than anything else, and he gives that, as well as good defense. They have Walker Kessler, one of the best defensive centers in the league already, but Lauri Markkanen, as great as he is offensively, he's not a great defensive player. He's gotten to the point where he's actually okay defensively, which is better than he was, but getting a great defender like Cason Wallace I think is a very huge piece for this offense and just the team as a whole. So 6'2", 195 pounds, 19 years old, 6'8" wingspan, pretty solid, 6 inches larger than his height, 12 points per game at Kentucky, 4 assists as well as 2 steals. He gets comparisons to a Drew Holiday type, as well as on the lower end someone like DeAnthony Melton, who we saw for the Sixers was actually really impactful. He might not have been a starter for most of the time with them, but DeAnthony Melton is one of the best backup guards in the entire league, and I think Cason Wallace can be a very good starting guard who provides a solid, consistent presence of passing and defense. He needs to come a ways as a shooter. He's pretty good in the mid-range, but he needs to develop his three-point shot. So kind of similar to Marcus Smart in that way, but really good defender, good passer, and I think he fills what the Jazz need. So at number 10, a guy that slipped a little bit. Some people have him as high as like 6 or 7, but he's here on the board at 10. The Dallas Mavericks take small forward / power forward Taylor Hendricks out of UCF. They get a guy who could end up being really solid. Game-changing point of attack defender who also fills gaps on offense as a playmaker and a shooter. So they got a guy who's, kind of like a great defender, switchable. I think they're going to end up running a lot of switches on a Luka Doncic defense, but we'll see what that looks like. 6'8", 215 pounds, 19 years old, with a 7'1" wingspan, pretty solid, 15 points per game, 7 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks. So they're tanking for 2 weeks, whatever you want to call it. It ends up working out. They get a good player compared to someone like Jeremy Grant and Jaden McDaniels, who a lot of people really love. And I think he's a similar player to McDaniels. He's not going to be that locked down defensively, but he's going to be a very good defender, as well as a much better rebounder than someone like Jeremy Grant, who's one of the worst rebounding forwards in the league for some reason. But Taylor Hendricks can rebound. He can play defense. After losing Dorian Finney-Smith. After losing Dorian Finney-Smith, they need defense. They get it here with Taylor Hendricks. He can also space the floor a little bit. I think it's basically exactly what they need, so their 2-week tank job ended up working almost perfectly for them. At number 11, the Orlando Magic back on the clock with the Bulls pick here. I have them going small forward / shooting guard Grady Dick out of Kansas. Sharp shooting wing with playmaking skill that'll make him more than just a specialist. 6'6", 205, just 19 years old with a 6'9" wingspan. Averaged 14 points a game for Kansas, one of the best teams in the country, and shot 40% from 3 with 5.1 rebounds. The thing with Anthony Black is he still has some shooting to work on, as well as does Paolo Banchero, not the best shooter. So adding a floor spacer like Grady Dick, I think, is a perfect fit for this team, something that they really need. Does he start? I don't know. I think maybe you start Markelle Fultz instead with an Anthony Black, Markelle Fultz backcourt, but if you want more spacing, you could start Grady Dick at the 2 with Franz at the 3 and Paolo at the 4. I think that would work just fine. And compared to Reggie Miller as well as Bojan Bogdanovic, I think the comparison to Bojan is probably a little more realistic, but his ceiling is high. He's a great shooter, and if he can develop more as a player outside of that, we could see him become a very, very important piece for this Magic team. At number 12, the Thunder on the clock, and this is a bit of a reach. A guy that's kind of projected around 20, kind of struggled in college this year, but was the number 1 overall recruit in his high school class and just got better as the season went on. Highly touted recruit who hasn't met expectations, but has defensive versatility and offensive upside. The thing the Thunder have is they have basically everything they need. They have a great core right now. They just need to grow together and get better over time, but they do kind of need a center. They have Jalen Williams out of Arkansas last year, kind of an undersized center. I don't know if he's probably a long-term option there, but Derek Lively next to a guy like Chet Holmgren at the 4 could provide you a very, very good rim protector and let Chet Holmgren kind of be that floater like I was talking about, like you might want Victor Wembanyama to do, just to kind of roam around and be able to block shots almost in a Robert Williams type defensive role. So you get Derek Lively to be the rim protector, the main guy down there. 7'1", 230, 7'7" wingspan. He tests great physically. He's almost a perfect NBA body, but 5.2 points, 5.4 rebounds. 2.5 blocks, though, is the interesting part. Kind of can be a Tyson Chandler type player who was super huge for the Mavs winning that championship, as well as like a stronger Nick Claxton. Nick Claxton kind of skinny, but Derek Lively is big. He's a big dude. He's not afraid to get physical, and he will block shots. So while this might be a slight reach, people will say, I think it's kind of an upside pick. He was viewed super high out of high school, and the Thunder are already on their way and have a ton of assets going forward. So I see no harm in making a move like this, and I think it projects well for upside. At number 13, I have the Toronto Raptors taking shooting guard / point guard Kobe Buffkin out of Michigan, a guy who's rising up the boards throughout the process after his freshman year at Michigan. Pretty much the whole time they were at Michigan, it was thought that Jet Howard would be the highest drafted guy, but Kobe Buffkin has kind of soared past him. Dynamic two-way presence who will fill up highlight reels. If his jumper keeps trending up, he has all-star potential, which is huge. It seems like Fred VanVleet might leave this summer, and this gives you kind of insurance against that. Even if Fred VanVleet ends up staying, they still need more guards. They need more backcourt. They have great wings. They have Scotty Barnes, Siakam, OG Anunoby. They need guards. So you get one here. 6'4", 185, 19 years old with a 6'8" wingspan, 14 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, and 36% from 3. They need more shooting. They're one of the worst shooting teams in the league, at least it felt like this season, because Scotty can't really space. I mean, OG and Siakam are kind of up and down, but OG has his moments where he's a really good shooter, but this team needs more shooting. They need more, and they love defensive guys. This is a great defensive guy. It's something that the Raptors prioritize, is we want guys that can play defense, and Kobe Buffkin can do that. Kind of a Tyrese Maxey type or Emmanuel Quickley. Guys that are quick, can explode up the floor, and get steals that lead to fast break points, and that's what Kobe Buffkin will give you, and that's why I have him going to 13, which he's a riser, and he might continue to rise. At number 14, the New Orleans Pelicans, I've been taking guard Nick Smith Jr. out of Arkansas. Another guy like Derek Lively, who was super highly recruited out of high school, but kind of struggled in college a little bit. Not quite as much as Lively did, but he struggled with injuries, which if you're the Pelicans, you're probably a little wary about. But 6'5", 185 pounds, just 19 years old with a 6'8" wingspan. Pro comparison is someone like Jamal Murray, Tyler Hero. They have a ton of great forwards right now. Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. At guard, it feels like they just have CJ McCollum at times. They need more guards, and Nick Smith is probably the highest upside guard here. You already have Dyson Daniels, who I actually liked in small stretches when we saw him last year, but getting a guy like Nick Smith, I think, is a great upside swing that could end up paying off really handsomely. At number 15, the Atlanta Hawks taking small forward Bilal Coulibaly, I think. Mets 92. He's Victor Wembanyama's teammate at Mets 92. Fast rising prospect who is luring in teams with his defense and intriguing offensive flashes. I was looking at it yesterday. The Hawks had the highest scoring offense in the Eastern Conference. Offense isn't their problem. Their problem is defense, because they also allowed 118 points per game while they scored 118 points per game. They need better defenders, and getting a guy who can switch, who's long, is a great fit for this Hawks team. 6'8", 190 pounds, only 18 years old, one of the younger prospects in this draft class, with a 7'3" wingspan, 7 inches higher than his height. Huge. It's a huge wingspan. 11.3 points, 4.4 rebounds, and 1.4 steals per game for Mets 92. He will be a great fit for this Hawks team, and you could slide him in the starting lineup next to someone like DeAndre Hunter. Then you have 2 elite defenders in your front court, as well as Clint Capella, who's a great rim protector. So I think getting these guys would be perfect. They need more defense, and getting a guy like Coulibaly would be perfect for this Hawks team. While they might need more offense in places off the bench, I think defense should be the main priority, and they get it here. I also like AJ Griffin to develop for them offensively. At number 16, I have the Utah Jazz taking shooting guard Keontae George out of Baylor, another high recruit who did show a lot of flashes in college actually, but his shot was kind of inconsistent. They have Jordan Clarkson is a free agent. He might end up leaving in free agency, so this is kind of insurance in case Clarkson leaves. Lively scorer with the ability to shred defenses, though his playmaking and defensive intensity give him the upside to be a complete guard. So he tries hard defensively, he's getting better as a playmaker. I think he's still a shooting guard more than a point guard. And a lot of Jazz fans actually really like someone like Ochai Agbaji to be their shooting guard going forward. But Keontae George is just a guy with really high scoring upside. 6'4", 185, 19 years old. We don't know his wingspan yet, hasn't been officially measured. So 15 points, 3 assists, 1 steal per game at Baylor, compared to Bradley Beal and Jaden Hardy, 2 great scorers who are kind of undersized. That's what Keontae George is going to give you. He's going to be a bucket, and Jazz fans would love watching this dude. Let me remind you too, the Jazz were in the playoff picture basically all year until they decided not to be. So now they get 2 guards who can kind of be their backcourt of the future and help them be a playoff team as soon as next season. It is a huge draft win for the Jazz here. At 17, the Lakers are on the board. I have them taking small forward / shooting guard Jet Howard out of Michigan. Slick offensive threat who could shine next to a lead playmaker like LeBron. 6'8", 215 pounds, 19 years old. Also don't know his wingspan yet, but 14 points per game, 2 assists, and 37% from 3. The Lakers don't shoot a ton of threes, but they need more spacing. That's why they brought Malik Beasley in, but Malik Beasley has been super inconsistent. So if they could get a guy that could be more consistent from 3, as well as potentially having more to his game than just a 3-point shooter, I think that's a great move here. Both Austin Reeves and Lonnie Walker will be free agents this offseason, so getting insurance to replace one or both of them would be a big win for you, compared to Desmond Bane, who just torched them in the playoffs. So if you can get a guy like Desmond Bane, I'm sure the Lakers would be thrilled for that. It's great insurance, and it's a high upside prospect. The Lakers are thrilled, and honestly, I think they're lucky to have a pick this high, because they're in the conference finals, yet they have pick 17. At pick 18, the Miami Heat are here, and I have them taking small forward / shooting guard Bryce Sensabaugh out of Ohio State. Pure bucket getter who wasn't projected to be a one and done, but shined as a freshman scorer. I think his per 40 minutes, so if he had played the entire college game, which a lot of the top college players do actually, his points per game was like 28 points per game or something. It was ridiculous. He is a bucket. While the Miami Heat's offense has gotten much better in the playoffs, during the regular season it was bad. So they need more consistent scoring, and they get a bucket getter here. 6'6", 235, kind of a bruiser, throw people around. 19 years old, 16 points per game at Ohio State as a freshman, 5 rebounds, and an elite shooter, 41% from 3, compared to a guy like TJ Warren, who at NC State in college was just a bucket. Also kind of like a Paul Millsap type, but a little more fluid, I think. At number 19, I have the Golden State Warriors taking guard Jalen Hood-Schifino out of Indiana. Big, cerebral guard who thrives as a playmaker from the mid-range. 6'4", 215, 20 years old, 6'10" wingspan, a very large wingspan. The thing I feel like they're missing from their other championship days is a great leader point guard off the bench. They had Sean Livingston forever, who was a great point guard for them throughout their dynasty, but a guy like Hood-Schifino here would be a great potential lead point guard off the bench and just help them there, as well as they might end up moving Jordan Poole. I don't think that's kind of a huge secret at this point. So they get a guy who can replace him in the lineup, kind of a Marcus Smart type guy, and Spencer Dinwiddie as kind of the playmaker and bucket getter he is, but has the defensive ability to be like Marcus Smart. So high upside pick here for the Warriors. I've seen him projected as high as lottery, but since the season has ended, his stock has actually started to slip a little bit, I feel like. But guard that I really like, so the Warriors get a good one here at 19. At 20, I have the Houston Rockets taking small forward / power forward Leonard Miller out of the Ignite. This guy keeps rising throughout the process. Do not be shocked if this guy is a lottery pick. He might be the Jalen Williams of this year's draft. Don't be shocked by that at all. He was great for the Ignite this season. Big man with guard skills, but he's still growing into his body. He's kind of raw as a prospect, like, just to be honest. He's not polished yet, but 6'9", 215 with the skills of a guard, with a 7'2" wingspan. 18 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 1 block per game. Average a double-double against grown men in the Ignite program. People just don't do that. They don't. That's more points per game than Scoot. That is way more rebounds per game than Scoot. Leonard Miller sneakily was the best and most consistent player on this Ignite team. While he doesn't have the upside or the pure talent as someone like Scoot, Leonard Miller is a very good player and could end up going higher. If I did a big board, which maybe I'll do at some point, he would be higher than 20, I can guarantee you that, but that's just where he ended up falling. Just with the other pieces around, I think it makes sense. They have Jabari Smith Jr., they have Tari Eason as well, but actually I think Miller's upside is higher than someone like Tari Eason, and having 3 good forwards is never a problem either. Kind of a Paul Millsap type guy, like younger Paul Millsap, but is going to be a good player. At number 21, I have the Brooklyn Nets taking shooting guard / small forward Ryan Rupert out of France. Lockdown defender who shows flashes on offense and could eventually become a complete player. So not a great two-way player right now, more of a great defensive guy than anything. 6'6", 195, just 19 years old, 7'3" wingspan, very, very good for his height. That is 9 inches larger than his height, which is insane. 7 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, 31% from 3, is compared to guys like Mikal Bridges, who's on their team and has developed very well offensively, so he could learn from him, as well as someone like Otto Porter Jr., who still has carved out a decent career. At 22, the Brooklyn Nets have them taking forward Gigi Jackson out of South Carolina. A super high recruit, he reclassified into this year's class, but I think he's a good player. I don't think he gets quite the due he should. At one point, he was considered lottery, but his stock has kind of plummeted up and down. Elastic forward who can create shots for himself. 6'6", 215 pounds, just 18 years old, one of the younger prospects in this class because he reclassified. 6'11" wingspan, 15 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 1 block per game. Just a good player. Compared to Marcus Morris, I think he has the upside to be a better defender than someone like Marcus Morris, but if you're picking at 22 and you get a guy that has the upside of someone like Marcus Morris, who we've seen be a 20-point scorer at some points, I think it's a good pick, and you're actually getting good value, even though some people might see Marcus Morris and be like, I don't know, but it's good value, trust me. At 23, the Portland Trail Blazers, I have them taking center James Naji out of Nigeria. One of the least proven prospects in this draft class, but one of the best NBA bodies in this draft class. Long arm big man who's built like a tank and has the mentality to dominate on both ends of the paint. 6'10", 225 pounds, is strong but could put on a little more weight anyway. 18 years old, one of the younger prospects in this year's draft class, with a 7'7" wingspan. Outside of Victor, is kind of the largest of better known prospects in this year's class. Very big wingspan, but just averaged 4 points, 2 rebounds, and like a half a block, but didn't get a ton of play time. Is very similar to someone like Clint Capella. I think he offers that kind of upside, and with Yusuf Nurkic kind of declining, maybe you can bring in James Naji and he can ascend as as Nurkic declines. So maybe the long-term starting center for someone like the Blazers. At 24, the Sacramento Kings, I just think it's too good. I'm taking the other twin, taking forward Chris Murray out of Iowa. Intelligent player who understands his 3-and-D role and thrives in it. 6'8", 215 pounds, 22 years old, with a 7-foot wingspan, not super huge for his height. 20 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 1 block at Iowa. You might think, hey, Keegan went, what did he go, 4th last year? So why did Keegan go 4th and Chris Murray is all the way down at 24? Is this year's draft class that much better than last year's? I would say no. I think one of the things that's holding him back is even though he's kind of seen as a 3-and-D type guy, Chris Murray's three-point percentage this year wasn't great. I believe it was around 32%. So he's not quite the sniper that his brother Keegan is a left-handed version of Keegan, so they have both-handedness in the family, which is interesting. But a similar player to Keegan, I just don't know if he offers the shooting upside, because Keegan's shooting is ridiculous. I believe he broke the record for most threes ever by a rookie. Keegan Murray is a phenomenal forward shooter. Chris Murray, not quite that, but getting 2 Murrays in your front court, especially with Harrison Barnes hitting free agency, it's a good pick to me. At 25, I have the Grizzlies taking small forward City Sissoko, also out of the G League Ignite. Physical presence who brings intensity on defense and complementary playmaking on offense. So they're going to lose Dylan Brooks, at least it seems. They told him that he wouldn't be back under any circumstances. It was either Woj or Shams that tweeted that. But 6'6", 225, just 19 years old with a 6'10" wingspan, 13 points per game, 3.5 rebounds with 1 steal per game. Compared to someone like young Jeff Green, I don't know if he has that kind of offensive upside, but he is that kind of hustle defender. Can guard positions basically 1 through 4. He's a very good defender, and they need a kind of point of attack wing defender after losing Dylan Brooks. At 26, the Indiana Pacers, I'm taking power forward Bobby Clintman out of Wake Forest. Kind of a raw prospect, kind of someone that most people thought would end up going out next year, but it seems like he's going to stay in this year. At least he's rising up board, so he probably will. High upside prospect if his shot creation manifests. He's a big, versatile two-way wing with desirable baseline skills. 6'10", 235, he's a big wing. Big. 20 years old, 7-foot wingspan, not huge for his height, but that's okay. 5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, but 37% from 3 is super interesting, because he presents you great floor spacing. So if he can begin to create for himself, like they said, that would make him a much higher level player. But compared to Nick Batum, who's a great forward floor spacer for a long time, as well as someone like Noah Vonleh with better handle, like better ball skills. So I think it's a good pick for Indiana. They did take a forward before in Jarris Walker, but getting another forward, especially somewhere where they really lack depth, I think is a good thing for them, especially with someone as high upside as Clintman. At 27, I have the Charlotte Hornets taking shooting guard Jordan Hawkins out of UConn. This is a dude that could end up going in the teens. He has that level of upside. Flawless shooter who bangs threes all over the court and brings tons of other winning qualities. Just won UConn the national title. He was kind of their second best player. Their big man Sanogo was really good, but is just a phenomenal floor spacer, catches off of screens, should go to a kind of screen heavy offense. But with Scoot Henderson there, with playing a big man like Mark Williams, they need more spacing, they need more shooting. It's just something that they need. So 6'4", 185, kind of scrawny, could put on a little more weight, but 21 years old, is polished, is probably more ready to contribute right away. 6'7" wingspan, 16 points per game at UConn this year, as well as 39% from 3 on super high volume and very difficult shots. So I actually think that 39% is kind of misleading, and he's an even better shooter than that might suggest. His pro comparison is someone like Max Strus, who as well really flourishes coming off of screens and firing, and someone like Rip Hamilton from the Pistons. At 28, the Utah Jazz, I've been taking power forward Noah Clowney out of Alabama, plays with an edge and possesses the type of defensive versatility that is valued in the NBA. So I think with him and with Walker Kessler, this potentially gives you one of the best defensive front courts in the entire NBA, because this duo would swallow up anyone trying to attack the rim. 6'10", 210 pounds, just 18 years old, again one of the younger prospects in this draft class. 10 points per game, 8 rebounds and 1 block. Was kind of the sidekick to Brandon Miller at Alabama this year, the two great freshmen there, and he's going to be a good pro. I still don't think he has a ton of offensive upside, but with him and Kessler, that defense would be elite, and I would love to see it. Pro comparison is someone like Wendell Carter. I don't think he quite has the shot of Carter, but he is working on it. At number 29, the Indiana Pacers, I've been taking shooting guard. Some would call him a small forward, but he's a little undersized for that for me. Colby Jones out of Xavier. Team player with NBA-ready qualities as a connective piece on offense and a versatile defender. So they took 2 front court guys already. I don't know if they'll actually end up taking all 3 picks just because they have a lot of backcourt depth. So if they get 2 front court guys, what else do they really need? But 6'5", 221 years old, 6'8" wingspan, not super huge, but 15 points per game, 4.4 assists, as well as 38% from 3. Pro comparison is someone like Malcolm Brogdon. If Buddy Hield ends up not being there long term, Colby Jones is a floor spacer and kind of just that offensive piece. Could be a similar guy to Hield for you. So I think it's kind of a value pick here at 29, is a guy that projects as a good NBA role player. I don't think he's ever going to be a star, but just is going to be a good role player in this league as a floor spacer and a pretty good playmaker for a wing. And with the last pick in this mock draft at number 30, I had the Los Angeles Clippers taking small forward Andre Jackson out of UConn. Menace of a defender who often baits opponents into mistakes, leading to easy blocks and steals. Doesn't have the great kind of stats to wow you necessarily, but just does everything defensively. This dude is clamps. 6'6", 200 pounds, just 21 years old, a 6'10" wingspan, as well as 7 points per game, 5 assists and 6 rebounds. Does a little bit of everything. Kind of a Robert Covington type of guy. Part of me wants to compare him to Mikal, but I just don't think he has the offensive upside as someone like Mikal. But maybe someone more like OG Anunoby is someone that Andre Jackson could become on the high side. Is just a great defender and a great value pick to me at 30, because while people might look at the stats and say they don't wow me, this dude is a winner. He's a winner. He's a guy that you want on a winning team, and just a piece that every team kind of needs. But that'll do it for this mock draft, the first post-lottery mock draft on this channel anyway, so hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, drop a like down below. Think about subscribing. I'm on the road to 8,000, so if you guys enjoy the content, think about subbing and sticking around. Thanks for watching if you stayed this long. It's kind of a long video, but I appreciate you. Have a good rest of your day, and that's going to be it for me. Peace.